Before we continue on, we should quickly run our app again in the iPhone simulator to make sure that none of the changes we've made have caused any problems for it. So I'll switch over to the iPhone simulator and run the app. That doesn't look very good. We can see that it terminated our app due to an uncaught exception. Specifically, an unrecognized selector was invoked on the main view controller. What you'll find is that writing universal apps require that you be mindful of which device a user is running and customize the execution path as necessary. In this lesson, we'll talk about observing UI idioms. UIKit allows us to easily query to find out which device type the app is currently running. There's a macro defined called UI interface idiom that we can use to determine the device. Let me switch over to the app delegate. Now in the last lesson we added this code to hook up the split view controller's delegate. This code is going to cause all kinds of problems when running on the iPhone. For starters, the iPhone doesn't have a split view controller, so it's really expecting an entirely different containment structure than what it has. Instead, we really want to restrict this code to be executed only when we're running on the iPad, but we can do that pretty easily. We'll say if UI user interface idiom is equal to UI user interface idiom iPad. And this just says if we're running on an iPad, go ahead and run this code. Otherwise, let's skip over it altogether. Let me highlight this. I'll just copy it. Now let's see if this fixed our immediate problem. Let's run the app again. And that looks better. Not crashing at app startup is a good thing. Let's go ahead and look at our list. Let's rotate it into landscape. Well, we didn't previously support landscape, but due to the fact that we overrode those should auto rotate methods, suddenly we're introducing that behavior into our iPhone. Well, in the case of our list, that doesn't actually look too bad. Let's navigate into our detail view. Well, that's all kinds of broken. We could go through the effort of making rotations work on both platforms, but as it's a behavior that's not necessarily expected on the iPhone, we probably want to restrict that to just the iPad. Let me quit the app. I'll switch over to the album details view controller. And in the should auto rotate to interface orientation method, instead of just passing back yes in all cases, let's be a little more restrictive and say if the UI interface idiom is equal to the iPad, let's say yes. So we'll support all four orientations. But if it's the iPhone, we're only going to support portrait. I'll do the same thing in our music list view controller. Let's run this again. Rotate, and we can see that's no longer working on the iPhone. Let's make sure that still works on the iPad. Scale this down again. Okay, so on both devices, our orientation is working as expected. A big part of successfully writing a universal app is observing the current UI idiom to follow the appropriate code path. In this lesson, we saw how to use the UI user interface idiom macro to make that determination.